We've got a guest with us here, Gary Copus from the program. Gary teaches in the online setting, teaches several sections of this class as well, and has been brainstorming with me on what I found to be a pretty fascinating idea that he kind of stumbled onto, a way of looking at particular type decisions. And so we wanted to discuss that with you and take the opportunity to kind of brainstorm with you guys about this topic. So I'm going to turn the time over to you, Gary, to start.
One of the things that occurred to us is that the study of ethics is to assist us in making decisions, and hopefully making good decisions, ethical decisions. And as we were thinking about the decision-making process, as we have been studying it in your text and in your meetings, it seemed to us that something was missing. And I'll tell you what that is in just a moment. But this brought up to us discussions about how in different areas of our profession, of our lives, we go about making decisions. And one of the things that I began to realize, and talking to Professor May became more apparent to me, is that there are different ways of going about learning, and these ways are related. You know, we normally don't think that they're related. Now, we're going to demonstrate that by looking at the way that a scientist, and what we call hypothesis testing, some of you may be familiar with that. We're not going to go very deep into it, but just enough to illustrate our point, and how that process that science uses to make decisions is very much akin to the way that we do criminal justice in our country, in Western societies in general. And the analogy between the two systems is quite fascinating. And we want to start out with that. And after we have covered and shown you the relationship between the two ways of thinking about decision making, then we want to use that knowledge to begin to maybe expand the material that we are now studying under utility and deontology. So we're going to kind of go in coordination here,
Okay.
if you will.
We'll try to be coordinated.
Yeah, try to be coordinated. And we showed me a little cheat sheet here. Not that it's all that difficult, but we want to get our boxes straight, so I'm going to use just a couple of cheat notes. And I'm going to talk about hypothesis testing. And if you take my course in research methods, maybe, I don't know if anybody has or had another course in research methods, this process is probably going to be very familiar to you. And I'm going to use a very practical example, and the example that I'm going to use is going to be that you are a police officer, fresh out of my research class, and your chief of police asks you to design a little study and to look into what seems to be a very simple problem, and that is whether or not a gas additive that he has read about in the Sunday paper would make any difference in the mileage that the patrol cars get. If he can reduce the mileage a couple miles per gallon, it could end up to be a big savings, you know, assuming that the additive doesn't cost that much. But he's asked you, he said, I want you to go out and I want you to do something to come back and advise me whether we should use that additive or not. Now, Professor May, what is your situation?
Trial process. We've got an individual who we believe has committed a crime, and the same kind of actual decisions that are going to go on over in the experiment process and the research process. I think you're going to find that those very same type of mentality and thinking and processes go on when we have a response to
As a matter of fact, one of the things we're going to start out with on my side is that we're going to make an assumption. Now, remember, we're looking at whether or not a gas additive is related to miles per gallon. That's the relationship that we want to start out with. And we're going to assume, in my method of hypothesis testing, that there is no relationship. And we're going to give it kind of a fancy name, and we're going to call this the null hypothesis, and we symbolize it shorthand that way. So easy enough. This is how my thinking in the scientific process of hypothesis testing begins. Then we're going to have another symbol, and we're going to call that the alternative hypothesis, and it merely says there is a relationship. In other words, the addition of the additive makes a difference in the gas mileage. We'll assume for now that if there is a difference, it's positive. It doesn't increase your gas mileage. Okay? It helps out. Okay, so how about on that side?
Yeah, on this side, similar thing. You've either got a situation where the individual, I'll use this symbol for it, the defendant is guilty, meaning factually they did commit the action that they're being charged with, or the defendant is not guilty.
Professor, which one do we start out with? I mean, we just
Okay.
start out, right now guilty rascal in here, and we'll give him a fair trial, or what?
It's a very good point that you raise. In our system, the Western system, we start with a presumption of innocence. The presumption is everyone is innocent until proven guilty. And so we start with that presumption of innocence.
In fact, did we call that sort of the null hypothesis?
You could call it the null, you could relate it to the null hypothesis.
It's the same thing. So really what I'd like you to do is to put that one up there, just to be fastidious, and so I could change mine, but you got less writing, right?
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, so we're going to start out with the presumption of innocence. Here we start out with the presumption that no relationship exists. In other words, here there's no relationship between what the person is accused for and what they actually did. The alternative here is what? Yes, there is a relationship, you did it. The alternative here says there's a relationship between putting additive in that gas tank and the amount of gas mileage that you're going to get out. All right, so we see right off that the system of thinking, it begins to strike us as sort of the same thing, same process that we're